They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Try telling that to a reincarnated sword cultivator who just woke up in a world where women run everything, and men are expected to look pretty and keep their mouths shut. My name is Adrian Vaughn, and in my last life, I was this close to becoming a god. Now I'm dodging love letters from heiresses, navigating the treacherous waters of an all-male finishing school, and trying to figure out how to apply ancient martial arts to a society that thinks men are decorative. It's either adapt or go insane. Frankly, I'm leaning towards a little bit of both. The air crackled with power. Raw, untamed energy surged around me, a vortex of swirling colors and blinding light. I, Adrian Vaughn, stood at the precipice, the culmination of centuries of relentless training, unwavering focus, and ruthless ambition. Above me, the gateway to the eternal realm shimmered, a tantalizing glimpse of immortality, of godhood. My path had been one of solitary dedication. The sword had been my only companion, cultivation my only purpose. I'd mastered the ancient arts, honed my body and spirit to the peak of human, and perhaps beyond human, potential. I'd faced down demons, vanquished rivals, and shed blood, my own and others, in pursuit of this one all-consuming goal. Leon, I thought, a flicker of a memory, a ghost of a feeling. A woman's face, beautiful and sad, a fleeting image of a life I'd chosen to leave behind. A life of connection, of love, of weakness. I'd sacrificed it all at the altar of power, and now I was about to reap the rewards. I closed my eyes, gathering the swirling energies, channeling them into the final crucial technique, the ascension, the transcendence, the leap from mortal to God. But something was wrong. A tremor ran through the air, a discordant note in the symphony of power. The gateway above me flickered, its light dimming, its edges fraying. A sharp, searing pain ripped through my chest, a feeling of violation, betrayal, sabotage, a flaw in my own technique, a consequence of my ruthless pursuit of power, my neglect of the human element. It didn't matter. The result was the same. Instead of ascending, instead of achieving the glorious immortality I'd craved, I felt myself falling. Not physically falling, but spiritually, ripped from the fabric of my reality, torn from the path I'd so meticulously carved. I was caught in a vortex, a chaotic maelstrom of colors and sensations. My body was stretched, twisted, compressed, my very essence unraveling. It was agony, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. A pain that went far beyond the physical. And then, nothing. Blackness, silence, oblivion. Or so I thought. Centuries before my rude awakening, as they now called it, Earth had shuddered. Not from a physical earthquake, but a societal one. The Great Shift, they called it, though historical accounts varied wildly on the why. Some blamed a magical plague, a mystical curse that selectively weakened men, leaving them physically and mentally diminished. Others pointed to a devastating war, a global conflict that wiped out the majority of the male population, leaving women to rebuild society in their own image. And then there were the whispers of a technological breakthrough, a secret weapon wielded by a cabal of feminist revolutionaries, determined to overthrow the patriarchy once and for all. Whatever the cause, the result was undeniable. The world had been turned upside down. Traditional gender roles were not just reversed, they were obliterated. Women ruled. They held all positions of power in government, in business, in the military, in every aspect of life. They were the warriors, the scholars, the leaders, the decision-makers. Men, on the other hand, well, let's just say they weren't exactly encouraged to pursue careers in quantum physics. They were groomed for domesticity, for subservience, for marriage. Their value lay primarily in their appearance, their demeanor, their ability to be pleasing companions to powerful women. The guiding philosophy of this new world order was the Confucian doctrine of women, a twisted, ironic perversion of the ancient text. It emphasized female strength, female leadership, and the inherent delicacy of men. It preached that men were emotional, irrational creatures, incapable of handling the burdens of power, best suited to supportive roles, to providing comfort and companionship to their female superiors. It was, to put it mildly, a mindfuck. I, Adrian Vaughn, the sword cultivator who had stood on the brink of godhood, was now expected to… what? Learn flower arranging? Practice my needlepoint? Compete for the attentions of some spoiled heiress who could probably bench press me without breaking a sweat? The sheer absurdity of it all would have been hilarious if it weren't so utterly terrifying. I was a warrior, a strategist, a survivor, and I was trapped in a world that had no place for me. Or so it seemed. But I was nothing if not adaptable, and I had a very, very long memory, especially when it came to betrayal. And this entire ridiculous world felt like the ultimate betrayal. The first step, clearly, was to figure out how to survive in this bizarro land. And then, well, then I'd figure out how to get back to my own reality and settle a few scores along the way. The room was pink. Not a subtle, dusty rose, but a full-on, aggressively pink assault on my senses. Ruffled curtains, floral wallpaper, a vanity table overflowing with things. Lotions, potions, an arsenal of implements designed to enhance male beauty. It was the antithesis of everything I knew, everything I valued. I sat up in the ridiculously soft bed, my head pounding, my body feeling wrong, weak, untrained. I looked down at my hands, slender and pale, the hands of a pampered youth, not the calloused, scarred hands of a warrior. I was 17 again. 17 and trapped in a nightmare. A mirror, framed in some sort of faux gold monstrosity, confirmed the horror. My face stared back at me, younger, softer, the hard lines of experience and battle replaced by a pretty boy innocence that made me want to punch something. My once close-cropped hair now fell in carefully styled waves around my face. I looked like a goddamn porcelain doll. "Master Adrian, are you awake?" A soft, hesitant voice called from beyond the door. "Master?" "Right." I cleared my throat, trying to force some semblance of my former authority into my voice. "Come in." The door opened and a man entered. He was my age, or what would have been my age in my previous life. But he was dressed in an apron, his hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, his demeanor submissive. "Good morning, Master Adrian," he said, bowing slightly. "I've prepared your breakfast. Your mother has already left for the office." My mother. Office? This was getting weirder by the second. "Father?" I asked, tentatively. The man looked slightly confused. "I am your father, Adrian. Are you feeling unwell?" This was my father. This gentle, apron-clad man who spoke to me with such deference. Was the patriarch of the Vaughn family? In my past life, fathers were warriors, leaders, figures of authority. This was a parody. Breakfast was another exercise in surrealism. My father, I still couldn't quite wrap my head around that, fussed over me, ensuring I had enough fruit, enough pastries, enough everything. He asked about my schedule for the day, reminding me of my grooming appointments, my etiquette lessons, my social engagements. "Remember, Adrian," he said, his voice earnest. "The selection ceremony is only a few weeks away. You need to make a good impression. Lady Hawthorne is particularly interested." Selection ceremony? Lady Hawthorne? What in the seven hells was going on? "This is ridiculous," I muttered, pushing my plate away. "Women are superior to men, and they are the ones chasing after us?" My father looked at me, startled. "Adrian, what a thing to say. Of course women are superior. It's the natural order. The Confucian doctrine clearly states—" He launched into a recitation of some societal dogma, a twisted version of Confucian principles that emphasized female dominance and male subservience. I tuned him out, my mind reeling. The elite prep school was the final nail in the coffin of my sanity. The Prestige Academy for Young Gentlemen was, essentially, a finishing school for future husbands. The curriculum was a horrifying mix of grooming, etiquette, domestic skills, and social graces. I sat in a classroom, surrounded by preening, perfumed young men, listening to a woman drone on about the proper way to fold a napkin, to pour tea, to… flatter a potential wife. Remember, gentlemen, the instructor, a severe-looking woman with a voice like nails on a chalkboard, said, your primary goal is to be pleasing to your future wife, to be supportive, to be understanding, to be submissive. I looked around at my classmates. They were taking notes, nodding earnestly, practicing their smiles in pocket mirrors. They were eager to be submissive, to be chosen, to be owned. The sheer absurdity of it all almost made me laugh. Almost. But it wasn't just the curriculum. It was the attitude. The constant pressure to be attractive, to be charming, to be desirable. The female students, meanwhile, roamed the halls like predators, assessing, judging, selecting. I received love letters, perfumed and flowery, filled with flowery, over-the-top declarations of affection from girls I'd never even met. I was invited to parties, to teas, to viewings where I was expected to parade myself like a prize pony. He's so handsome, isn't he? I overheard one girl whisper to another as I walked past. Yes, but he's a bit rough around the edges, her companion replied. Needs a firm hand to tame him. Tame me? I, Adrian Vaughn, the sword cultivator who had faced down demons and emperors? I was about to be tamed by a gaggle of giggling schoolgirls? I decided to do some research. I needed to understand this world, this twisted society, this insanity. I found the answers in the Academy Library, in history books that painted a horrifying picture of a world gone wrong. The Great Shift, they called it. A cataclysmic event, 3 centuries past, that had fundamentally altered the balance of power between men and women. The most prevalent theory, the one taught in schools and enshrined in the Confucian doctrine of women, was a magical plague. A mysterious illness that had swept across the globe, weakening men, diminishing their physical strength, their mental acuity, their virility. Women, immune to the plague, had risen to fill the void, taking control of society, establishing a new world order based on female dominance. Other theories, dismissed as fringe conspiracies, spoke of a devastating war, a technological breakthrough, a social revolution gone horribly wrong. Whatever the cause, the result was clear. Men were second-class citizens, valued primarily for their appearance, their obedience, and their ability to produce offspring. Women held all the power, all the wealth, all the control. It was a twisted, perverse parody of the world I knew. And I, Adrian Vaughn, was caught in the middle of it. But I wouldn't be a victim. I wouldn't be a pawn. I wouldn't be tamed. I started to rebel, subtly at first. I refused to participate in the grooming rituals. I skipped the etiquette lessons. I challenged the instructors. I questioned the doctrine. Why should men be subservient to women? I asked during one particularly tedious lecture on the art of pleasing your wife. The instructor, a woman named Madame Beaumont, looked at me as if I'd grown a second head. Because it is the natural order, Mr. Vaughn, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Women are stronger, more intelligent, more capable. Men are meant to be supportive, to be decorative. Decorative? I repeated, my voice laced with sarcasm. Is that all we are? Ornaments? Trophies to be displayed? My classmates shifted uncomfortably, some giggling nervously, others looking at me with a mixture of fear and admiration. Mr. Vaughn, Madame Beaumont said, her voice hardening, you would do well to remember your place. My place? I challenged, standing up, my voice ringing with a defiance I hadn't felt in years, centuries. My place is wherever I choose to be, and I choose not to be a decoration. I walked out of the classroom, leaving Madame Beaumont sputtering in outrage, my classmates staring at me in stunned silence. It was a small act of rebellion, a tiny crack in the facade of this twisted society, but it was a start, and I, Adrian Vaughn, the reborn cultivator, the unwilling pretty boy, was just getting warmed up. The game, as always, was on, and this time I intended to win, on my own terms, And perhaps, just perhaps, I'd burn this ridiculous world to the ground in the process. My family, in this twisted reality, was a reflection of the world's inverted power dynamics. My father, a gentle, artistic soul, was the homemaker, the caregiver, the submissive one. My mother, a high-powered executive in a sprawling corporation, was the breadwinner, the authority figure, the dominant one. It was a dynamic that frankly made my skin crawl. And then there was Celine, my younger sister. She was everything I wasn't in this new world. Assertive, confident, and utterly in control. She was a star athlete, a top student, and a rising star in the prestigious Young Women's Leadership League. She embodied the ideals of this matriarchal society, a perfect example of female dominance. But she also, surprisingly, cared. "Adrian," she said one evening as we sat in the ridiculously pink living room, my father's decorating choice naturally, "you need to get it together. You're embarrassing yourself, and frankly, the family." "Embarrassing myself?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "By refusing to be a simpering, obedient lapdog?" She sighed, a surprisingly mature sound coming from my younger sister. "You know what I mean. You're not playing the game. You're not trying to attract a suitable wife." "A suitable wife?" I scoffed. "I'm 17, Celine. I'm not looking for a wife. I'm looking for a way to make sense of all this." She studied me for a moment. Her eyes narrowed. "You're different, Adrian," she said. "You've changed. You're stronger, more defiant. Maybe I'm just tired of being treated like a piece of meat," I muttered. "It's the way things are, Adrian," she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. "It's the natural order." "It's not natural," I retorted. "It's absurd." She sighed again. "Look, I know it's hard, but you need to adapt. You need to find a good match, a powerful woman who can provide for you, protect you. It's the only way for a man to succeed in this world." "I don't want to succeed in this world, Celine," I said, my voice rising. "I want to change it, or at least to find a way out of it." She clearly saw the differences, but didn't know the root cause. Her expression softened. "I know you're struggling, Adrian," she said. "But I'm here for you, even if you are a bit rebellious." It was a small gesture of support, a flicker of understanding in a world that felt increasingly alien. But it was enough. It was a reminder that even in this twisted reality, some bonds remained. And then she arrived. Yeva Sinclair. She was everything I'd expected, and yet nothing like I'd imagined. She was a high-ranking officer in the Military Surveillance Division, a force that, from what I could gather, combined the roles of the police, the military, and the Secret Service. She was power personified. She arrived at the academy unannounced, striding into the main courtyard like she owned the place, which, in a way, she probably did. She was tall, muscular, with a severe haircut and eyes that could freeze lava. She wore a uniform that screamed authority, and she carried herself with an air of command. And she was looking for me. "Adrian Vaughn," she said, her voice echoing across the courtyard, silencing the usual chatter and laughter of the students. "I am Commander Yeva Sinclair, and I am here to assess you." The other male students, my classmates, looked at me with a mixture of envy and fear. They knew what this meant. To be assessed by Yeva Sinclair was to be considered for selection. To be chosen as her great white horse. It was, supposedly, the highest honor a man could achieve in this society. To be the chosen companion of a powerful woman. To be showered with gifts, with status, with protection. To be, essentially, a prized pet. I, however, was less than thrilled. "Commander Sinclair," I replied, my voice carefully neutral. "I'm honored by your interest, but I'm afraid I'm not available." Her eyebrows rose, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "Not available?" she repeated. "Mr. Vaughn, in this world, men are always available. It's a matter of selection." I'm a bit of a traditionalist, Commander, I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. I believe in choice, in freedom, in not being treated like a piece of property. The courtyard was silent. The other students were staring at me, aghast. No one, no one spoke to Yeva Sinclair like that. She studied me for a long moment, her gaze intense, unnervingly perceptive. Then, a slow smile spread across her face. Intriguing, she said, her voice a low purr. You're not like the others, Mr. Vaughn. You have spirit. I like that. She turned to the assembled students, her voice now ringing with authority. Adrian Vaughn, she declared, is under my protection. He is mine. Anyone who interferes with him will answer to me. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, the object of everyone's attention, the unwilling recipient of her favor. I was repulsed, yes, by her arrogance, by her possessiveness, by the sheer absurdity of the situation. But I was also intrigued. She was powerful, undeniably so, and power in any form was a valuable commodity. The flashbacks started soon after. Fragments of my past life, memories of battles fought, of techniques mastered, of power. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart pounding, my body covered in sweat, the images of my former life vivid and overwhelming. I remembered the feel of my sword in my hand, the surge of energy as I channeled my cultivation, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. I started to train, secretly, in the dead of night. I used the Academy's gym, pushing my weak, untrained body to its limits. I practiced the forms, the movements, the breathing techniques I'd learned centuries ago. It was slow, frustrating work. My body was a pale imitation of what it once was. My cultivation powers were dormant, a faint flicker of energy that I couldn't quite grasp. But I persisted. I pushed myself, day after day, night after night, driven by the memories of my past, by the burning desire to regain my strength, to reclaim my power. I was a warrior, a cultivator, a survivor, and I wouldn't let this twisted world, this absurd society, break me. I would adapt. I would overcome. I would find a way. The whispers of my past were becoming a roar, and I, Adrian Vaughn, was finally starting to listen. The game, as always, was afoot, and this time I had more than just knowledge on my side. I had a burning desire to reclaim what I had lost, and perhaps, just perhaps, to change this world in the process. My body, this weak, untrained vessel, was a constant source of frustration. The muscle memory was there, the instincts, the reflexes, but the strength, the speed, the power, it was all a faint echo of what I once possessed. Still, I trained. Every night after the academy was quiet, I'd sneak out to the deserted gymnasium, pushing my body to its limits. I practiced the forms, the stances, the movements of my sword style, adapting them to my current limitations. I ran, I lifted, I sparred with imaginary opponents, my mind filled with the ghosts of past battles. The cultivation techniques, however, were more challenging. The energy of this world, this earth, felt different. Thinner, diluted, less responsive. The mystical energies I was accustomed to drawing upon, to channeling, to wielding like a weapon, were almost non-existent. It's like trying to breathe underwater, I muttered to myself, after another frustrating meditation session. I was sitting cross-legged in my room, trying to sense the flow of energy around me, to connect with the fundamental forces of nature. But it was no use. I felt empty, disconnected. But I refused to give up. I experimented, adapting my techniques, modifying my approach, trying to find a way to tap into this world's energy, to harness its power. And slowly, gradually, I began to see results. Not the dramatic, earth-shattering power I'd once wielded, but something. A flicker of energy, a subtle enhancement of my senses, a slight increase in my strength and speed. It was enough. Enough to give me an edge, enough to make me a force to be reckoned with, even in this weakened state. And then there was the other application of my knowledge. I'd always been more than just a warrior. I was also a scholar, a craftsman, a tinkerer. In my past life, I'd studied the art of creating enchanted artifacts, imbuing objects with magical properties. It was a long shot, but I decided to try it, to see if my knowledge, my skills, could be applied in this technology-driven world. I started small, using simple materials I could acquire discreetly, stones, metals, herbs. I focused on basic enchantments, protection, enhanced senses, minor healing. I used my faint connection to this world's energy, channeling it through my hands, imbuing the objects with a subtle, almost imperceptible power. The first artifact I created was a simple amulet, a small silver pendant carved with ancient runes. It was designed to enhance the wearer's senses, to sharpen their perception, to give them a slight edge in social situations. I sold it discreetly to one of my classmates, a particularly insecure young man who was desperate to impress a certain heiress. "It's a good luck charm," I told him, my voice carefully neutral. "It will enhance your charisma, make you more noticeable." He paid me a ridiculous sum for it, his eyes shining with a mixture of hope and skepticism. And it worked. Not in any dramatic, magical way, but the amulet, imbued with a subtle energy, gave him a boost of confidence, a heightened awareness of his surroundings, a presence that he'd previously lacked. He became more assertive, more charming, more successful. Word spread. Quietly, discreetly, among the students. The lucky charm became a sought-after item, a secret weapon in the cutthroat world of social climbing. And I, Adrian Vaughn, the Reborn cultivator, became a purveyor of magic. Carter's Curios, I called my little enterprise. It was a discreet, almost invisible operation, conducted through coded messages, anonymous drops, and untraceable transactions. I created a variety of amulets, each with a specific purpose, each subtly enchanted with my unique blend of cultivation knowledge and this world's energy. It was a lucrative business, providing me with a steady stream of income, independent of my family's, or rather my mother's, wealth. But it was also more than that. It was a way to test my abilities, to explore the limits of my power, to make a difference in my own way. And it was through this enterprise that I attracted the attention of two very different, very powerful women. Victoria Monroe was the heiress to the Monroe Corporation, a global conglomerate that controlled vast swaths of the economy. She was beautiful, ruthless, and utterly spoiled. She saw in me not a person, but an asset, a valuable tool to be acquired, controlled, and used to further her own ambitions. "Mr. Vaughn," she said, her voice smooth and condescending, during our first official meeting, a carefully orchestrated encounter at a school social event. "I've heard interesting things about your talents, your unique abilities." "I'm just a student, Miss Monroe," I replied, my voice carefully neutral. "Oh, I think you're much more than that, Mr. Vaughn," she said, her eyes glittering with a predatory gleam. "I think you're a man with potential that I can cultivate." Her intentions were clear. She wanted to own me, to control me, to add me to her collection of possessions. Sophia Lancaster, on the other hand, was a different proposition altogether. She was the student body president, a position of considerable power within the academy. She was enigmatic, intelligent, and utterly unpredictable. She saw in me not a tool, but a challenge, a puzzle to be solved, a game to be played. "You're an interesting anomaly, Mr. Vaughn," she said, her voice a low, amused murmur as she cornered me in the library one afternoon. "You don't fit the mold. You're different." "Different how, Miss Lancaster?" I asked, my voice wary. "You're not like the other boys," she said, her eyes studying me intently. "You're not afraid. You're not eager to please. You have a certain strength, a certain mystery." She was intrigued by me, by my refusal to conform, by the subtle hints of power that I couldn't quite conceal. She saw me as a potential ally, a potential rival, a potential plaything. And so I found myself caught between two powerful women, each with their own agenda, each vying for my attention, my loyalty, my power. It was a dangerous game, a complex dance of manipulation and intrigue. But I, Adrian Vaughn, the reborn strategist, was ready to play. I would use their interest to my advantage, to further my own goals, to build my own power base. I would navigate the treacherous waters of this reversed world, and I would emerge victorious. On my own terms, the game as always was about control, and I, for once, intended to be the one in control, not the pawn. My unconventional approach to life at the Prestige Academy for Young Gentlemen wasn't exactly winning me any friends among my male peers. While I was dodging bouquets and love letters from heiresses, they were, understandably, less than thrilled. I was, after all, disrupting the established order, hogging the attention, and generally making it harder for them to secure a favorable match. And that resentment, that jealousy, coalesced around one particularly unpleasant individual, Lucas Bennett. Lucas was the epitome of the entitled, spoiled, rich kid. He was handsome, in a bland, conventionally attractive way, and he was used to getting everything he wanted. He'd set his sights on Victoria Monroe, a disastrous pairing I privately cheered on for the sheer chaos it would unleash, and he saw me as a threat, an obstacle to his carefully laid plans. Vaughn, he sneered one afternoon, cornering me in the hallway with his usual entourage of equally vapid sycophants. You think you're so special, don't you, with all the girls chasing after you? I haven't noticed, I replied, my voice carefully neutral. I was leaning against a wall, feigning nonchalance, but every muscle in my body was coiled, ready to react. You're a freak, Vaughn, he continued, his voice rising. You don't belong here. You're not one of us. And what exactly are you, Bennett? I asked, raising an eyebrow. The gatekeeper of acceptable masculinity? His face flushed red. He took a step closer, his fists clenched. I'm warning you, Vaughn, he said, his voice low and threatening. Stay away from Victoria and stay out of my way. Or what? I challenged, my voice dangerously soft. You'll, what? Challenge me to a duel of hair gel application? A contest of cravat tying? His friends snickered, but Lucas didn't find it amusing. He lunged at me, shoving me against the wall. It was a mistake. Years of cultivation, of rigorous training, of battling actual demons had honed my reflexes to a razor's edge. Even in this weakened body, I was faster, stronger, more dangerous than he could possibly imagine. I easily sidestepped his clumsy attack, grabbing his wrist and twisting it with a sharp, precise movement. He yelped in pain, his face contorting in surprise and agony. I suggest you choose your battles more carefully, Bennett, I said, my voice calm but firm. You wouldn't want to get hurt. I released his wrist, and he stumbled back, clutching his arm, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hatred. You'll pay for this, Vaughn, he hissed. I look forward to it, I replied, smiling. The encounter, while satisfying on a primal level, served as a reminder. I couldn't afford to be reckless. I needed to be smarter, more strategic. I needed to innovate. And that's where my side hustle came in. Carter's Curios was more than just a source of income. It was a laboratory, a place where I could experiment, where I could blend my knowledge of cultivation with this world's technology, where I could create advantages. I'd moved beyond simple amulets. I was now working on more complex artifacts, devices that could enhance physical abilities, manipulate energy fields, even influence thoughts. One particular project consumed my attention. I was working on a device, a small, inconspicuous bracelet that could amplify the wearer's physical strength and speed. It was based on the principles of chi circulation, of channeling energy, but adapted to this world's peculiar energetic signature. It's like amplifying the body's natural electricity, I muttered to myself as I tinkered with the device, carefully soldering tiny wires and embedding miniature crystals. Creating a biofeedback loop, enhancing the neural pathways. It was a delicate, complex process, requiring precision, focus, and a deep understanding of both mystical energies and technological principles. But I was making progress, slow, steady progress. And then I stumbled upon something dark. I had been researching the local underworld, looking for potential buyers for my less conventional artifacts, when I heard whispers of an underground fighting ring, a place where men, desperate for money or forced into servitude, were pitted against each other in brutal, no-holds-barred combat for the entertainment of wealthy, jaded women. It was barbaric, disgusting, and utterly predictable. I decided to investigate, not as a participant, of course, but as an observer. I needed to understand the dynamics, to assess the risks, to see if there was a way to intervene. The fighting ring was located in a derelict warehouse district, far from the glittering lights of the elite academy and the manicured lawns of Ashwood Heights. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, blood, and desperation. I watched, hidden in the shadows, as two men, their bodies bruised and battered, fought in a makeshift ring. They were clearly untrained, unskilled, driven by desperation and fueled by fear. The crowd, a collection of wealthy women, cheered and jeered, placing bets, reveling in the spectacle of male brutality. It made my stomach churn. The exploitation, the dehumanization, the sheer cruelty of it all. "This is barbaric," I muttered to myself. "It's entertainment, darling," a voice said beside me. I turned to see a woman, elegantly dressed, her face painted with a bored, almost disdainful expression. She was one of the regulars, I realized, a patron of this disgusting spectacle. "Entertainment?" I repeated, my voice laced with disgust. "These are men, not animals." She shrugged, her gaze fixed on the fight. "They're gladiators," she said. "They choose to fight. For money, for glory, for—" She paused, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "For our amusement." I knew I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I couldn't ignore the suffering, the exploitation, the injustice. I started formulating a plan to disrupt the fighting ring, to free the men, to make a statement. But it would be risky, dangerous. I would be challenging powerful figures, people who wouldn't hesitate to use violence to protect their interests. But I didn't care. I'd faced down demons and emperors in my past life. I wouldn't be intimidated by a bunch of spoiled socialites and their hired thugs. The game, as always, was evolving. And I, Adrian Vaughn, the reborn cultivator, the reluctant pretty boy, the savior, I was ready to play. This time, however, I was playing for more than just myself. I was playing for justice, for freedom, for a world that perhaps didn't deserve saving, but that I was determined to save anyway. The whispers of my past were fading, replaced by the roar of defiance, of a determination to not just survive, but to change this world, one shattered expectation at a time. My actions, my disruptions, hadn't gone unnoticed. I'd made enemies, powerful enemies, and they were starting to fight back. It happened one night, as I was returning to the academy from one of my clandestine meetings with my contacts in the underworld. I was walking through a deserted alleyway, a shortcut I often used when I sensed it. The shift in the air, the subtle change in the shadows, the presence of danger. Years of cultivation, of living on the edge, had honed my instincts to a razor's edge. I knew before I even saw them that I was being attacked. 3 figures emerged from the darkness, their faces obscured by masks, their movements swift and silent. They were professionals, assassins, hired to kill me. I reacted instantly, my body moving on instinct, dodging the first attack, a knife thrust aimed at my heart. I parried the second, deflecting a blow from a stun baton, and countered with a swift kick, sending one of the attackers sprawling. The fight was brutal and chaotic. I was outnumbered, outgunned, literally. One of the attackers had a small but deadly energy pistol, and fighting in a confined space. But I was also fighting for my life. I used every trick I knew, every technique I'd mastered. I used the environment to my advantage, dodging behind crates, using the shadows to conceal my movements, turning their numbers against them. But they were good, too good. I was taking hits, feeling the sting of the stun baton, the sharp pain of a grazed knife wound. I was starting to tire, to slow down. And then she arrived. Yeva Sinclair. She appeared out of nowhere, a whirlwind of fury and lethal grace. She moved with a speed and precision that I could only admire, dispatching the remaining attackers with a series of brutal, efficient strikes. In a matter of seconds, it was over. The assassins were down, either unconscious or dead. I wasn't sure, and frankly, I didn't care. "You're getting sloppy, Vaughn," Yeva said, her voice a low growl as she surveyed the scene. "I had it under control," I retorted, my voice strained. She raised an eyebrow, her gaze sweeping over my bruised and battered body. "Clearly," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Thank you," I said grudgingly, "for intervening." "Don't mention it," she said. "I can't have my great white horse getting himself killed. It would be inconvenient." Her possessiveness still grated on me, but I couldn't deny her effectiveness. She'd saved my life, and that, in my book, earned her a certain leeway. For now, at least. The assassination attempt was a wake-up call. It was a clear indication that my enemies were getting desperate, that they were willing to resort to extreme measures to eliminate me. I was no longer just a nuisance, a rebellious student. I was a threat, and that meant I needed allies, real allies, not just reluctant acquaintances or opportunistic business partners. And that's where Jillian Wright came in. I'd met Jillian a few weeks earlier, during one of my explorations of the city's underbelly. She was a mercenary, a former soldier, a woman who lived by her own code in a world that had little use for women like her. She was tough, cynical, and fiercely independent. And she was also, as I discovered, a mother. Her daughter, a young girl named Lily, was suffering from a rare and deadly disease, a genetic disorder that was slowly shutting down her organs. The doctors had given up hope. Jillian was desperate. And I, Adrian Vaughn, the Reborn cultivator, saw an opportunity. I offered to help, not for money, not for favors, but because it was the right thing to do. I used my knowledge of cultivation, of energy manipulation, of ancient healing techniques. I combined it with my understanding of this world's technology, creating a device, a specialized amulet, that could regulate Lily's failing organs, stabilize her condition, give her a chance to live. It wasn't a cure, but it was a reprieve, a chance for a miracle. Jillian watched, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief, as I worked on her daughter, channeling energy, manipulating the amulet, whispering ancient incantations. And it worked. Lily's breathing stabilized, her color returned, her eyes fluttered open. She was weak, frail, but alive. Jillian stared at me, her face a mask of shock and gratitude. You saved her," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I bought her some time," I corrected. "But she's still fragile." "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't need to," I replied. "Just promise me you'll protect her." "I swear it," she said, her voice fierce and unwavering. "I swear it on my life, and I swear my loyalty to you, Adrian Vaughn. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm yours." And with those words, a bond was forged. A bond of trust, of gratitude, of mutual respect. Jillian Wright, the elite mercenary, became my ally, my protector, my confidant. She was invaluable. She had connections, resources, information that I desperately needed. She knew the underworld, the power players, the secrets. And she was loyal, utterly, fiercely loyal. A loyalty that went beyond any contract, any payment, any obligation. With Jillian's help, I started to unravel the web of corruption that permeated this society. I used my artifacts, my growing network of contacts, my unique abilities to gather evidence, to expose the lies, to fight back. I leaked information to the press, exposing the illegal dealings of corrupt corporations, the abuses of power by government officials, the, the exploitation of men in this twisted world. I manipulated stock prices, using my knowledge of future trends, gleaned from my past life memories, to bankrupt my enemies, to enrich my allies, to shift the balance of power. I used my artifacts to gather evidence, to record conversations, to see through the lies. I was playing a dangerous game, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, but I was also slowly but surely dismantling the power structures that maintained this oppressive society. I was exposing the rot, the corruption, the injustice. I was becoming a force for change, a catalyst for revolution. And my enemies, the powerful women who controlled this world, were starting to realize that they had underestimated me. They had thought I was just a pretty boy, a rebellious student, a minor annoyance. They were wrong. I was Adrian Vaughn, the reborn cultivator, the unwilling pawn, the agent of chaos, and I was just getting started. The game, as always, was about to reach its climax, and I, for the first time in this twisted reality, felt like I was finally in control. The hunter had become the hunted, and the prey, it turned out, had teeth. Very sharp ones. The whispers about Carter's curios had, inevitably, reached the ears of the truly powerful. My little enterprise, once a discreet source of income, was now attracting attention from all the wrong people. And that attention culminated in an invitation to the event of the season, the Blackwood auction. The Blackwood auction was an annual, invitation-only affair, where the elite of society gathered to bid on rare and exotic items, ancient artifacts, forbidden technologies, and most importantly, mystical materials. It was a playground for the powerful, a place where fortunes were made and lost, where alliances were forged and broken. I knew from my research and Jillian's invaluable intel that this year's auction would feature a particularly significant item, a collection of raw, unrefined crystals, imbued with a potent form of energy that I recognized from my cultivation days. In the hands of someone who knew how to use them, these crystals could be incredibly powerful, capable of enhancing magical abilities, powering advanced technology, or even creating weapons. I had to have them. The auction was held in a lavishly decorated ballroom, a scene of opulent excess that would have made my past life self roll my eyes. Women in extravagant gowns, dripping with jewels, mingled with impeccably dressed men, their faces carefully neutral, their eyes constantly assessing, calculating. I arrived dressed in a subtly tailored suit, a concession to this world's ridiculous standards, with Belinda, my ever-present shadow, at my side. I'd insisted on this as I needed someone I could trust. I saw them, of course. Victoria Monroe, clinging to her mother's arm, her eyes scanning the room with a predatory hunger. Sophia Lancaster, surrounded by her coterie of admirers, her expression cool and calculating. Yeva Sinclair, in a surprisingly elegant dress uniform, her gaze fixed on me with that unsettling mixture of possessiveness and respect. The bidding began, a tense, cutthroat affair with fortunes changing hands on the whim of a raised paddle. I remained silent, observing, assessing, waiting for my moment. When the crystals were finally presented, the room went silent. They were displayed on a velvet cushion, glowing with an inner light, their power palpable even to the untrained eye. The bidding started low, then quickly escalated, driven by the desires of the powerful women who craved the power the crystals represented. Victoria Monroe was a fierce bidder, her eyes glittering with ambition, her mother whispering instructions in her ear. Sophia Lancaster, as always, was more subtle, her bids carefully calculated, her expression unreadable. I waited. I let them drive up the price, let them exhaust their resources, let them reveal their desperation. And then, when the bidding reached a fever pitch, when it seemed like Victoria Monroe would secure the prize, I made my move. 1 billion, I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. the young, rebellious man who dared to challenge the established order. Victoria's face contorted with fury. Sophia's expression remained unreadable, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Respect? Amusement? The bidding continued, but it was a formality. I had the resources, the determination, and most importantly, the knowledge of the crystal's true worth. I outbid them all, securing the prize with a final, decisive bid that left the room buzzing with speculation and resentment. The victory was sweet, but it was also a provocation. I had thrown down the gauntlet, challenged the powerful, and made myself a target. And, as I expected, the invitation arrived soon after. It was an invitation to a private gathering, a summit of sorts, hosted by the Council of Matriarchs, the ruling body of this reversed world. It was an exclusive affair, attended by the most powerful and influential women in society. A place where decisions were made, alliances were forged, and destinies were shaped. It was also, I knew, a trap. My enemies, angered by my defiance, my growing influence, my disruptive presence, were gathering. They wanted to eliminate me, to silence me, to put me back in my place. But I also saw it as an opportunity. A chance to strike a decisive blow, to expose their corruption, to change the game. "They're trying to corner you, Adrian." Jillian warned me, her voice filled with concern. "This gathering, it's dangerous. They'll be looking for any excuse to discredit you, to destroy you." "I know," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "But I have to go. It's the only way." "The only way to what?" she asked. "To get yourself killed?" "The only way to win," I corrected her. The gathering was held in a secluded mansion, a fortress of wealth and privilege, hidden away from the prying eyes of the world. The atmosphere was thick with tension, with suspicion, with the unspoken threat of violence. I navigated the treacherous currents of the gathering with a carefully cultivated mask of indifference, observing, assessing, playing the part of the naive, easily manipulated young man they expected me to be. I formed temporary alliances, playing on the rivalries and ambitions of the various factions. I whispered secrets, planted doubts, and subtly manipulated the situation to my advantage. I saw Victoria Monroe, her eyes filled with hatred, whispering to a group of powerful executives. I saw Sophia Lancaster, watching me from across the room, her expression unreadable. I even saw Yeva Sinclair, her gaze lingering on me with a possessive intensity that made my skin crawl. And then, the trap was sprung. A woman I'd never met before, a powerful politician with a reputation for ruthlessness, approached me, a smile on her face that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Vaughn," she said, her voice smooth and honeyed, "we've been hearing disturbing rumors about you, about your unconventional methods, about your disrespect for our traditions." "Rumors, Madam President?" I replied, my voice carefully neutral. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play coy with me, Mr. Vaughn," she said, her voice hardening. "We know about your activities, your illegal trading, your manipulation of the market, your subversive influence." She signaled to a group of guards who stepped forward, their hands resting on their weapons. "We have evidence, Mr. Vaughn," she continued. "Evidence that proves your guilt. Evidence that will see you removed from society permanently." It was a carefully orchestrated frame-up, a blatant attempt to silence me, to eliminate me. But I was ready. "Evidence?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "I'd be very interested to see this evidence." I activated a small, inconspicuous device hidden in my pocket, a device I'd created using my knowledge of cultivation and technology. It emitted a subtle energy field, disrupting the recording devices, scrambling the surveillance systems, creating a blind spot. "You see, Madam President," I continued, my voice now low and dangerous, "I also have evidence. Evidence of your corruption, of your crimes, of your conspiracy against not just me, but against the very foundations of this society." I pulled out a small crystal sphere, a modified version of the enchanted mirror I'd used to expose Damien. It projected a holographic image into the air, a series of recordings, documents, and testimonies that laid bare the truth of the president's schemes, her alliances with corrupt corporations, her manipulation of the political system, her plan to seize absolute power. The room erupted in chaos. Accusations flew, alliances shattered, and the carefully constructed facade of order crumbled. I had turned the tables. I had used their own weapons against them, exposing their lies, their hypocrisy, their treachery. The gathering dissolved into a shouting match, a free-for-all of accusations and denials. The president, her face contorted with rage and disbelief, tried to order my arrest, but her guards hesitated, unsure of whom to obey. I had sown chaos, disrupted the balance of power, and created an opportunity to reshape this world, to challenge its foundations, to create a future where men and women could coexist, not as masters and servants, but as equals. The game, as always, was far from over. But I, Adrian Vaughn, the reborn cultivator, the unexpected revolutionary, was finally playing to win. And this time, I wouldn't settle for anything less than a complete and utter victory. The discovery was accidental, a byproduct of my relentless pursuit of knowledge. I'd been delving deeper into the fusion of cultivation and technology, pushing the boundaries of what was possible, seeking a way to amplify my abilities, to solidify my control. I was experimenting with the rare crystals I'd acquired at the Blackwood auction, trying to unlock their full potential. I'd built a device, a resonator of sorts, designed to amplify and focus their energy. And then it happened. A surge of power, a blinding flash of light, and a tear in reality. It was a gateway, a portal, shimmering in the air like a heat haze. It was unstable, fluctuating, but it was undeniably there. A window into another dimension, another realm. My heart pounded. My past life, my home, the possibility of return. I stared at the gateway, my mind racing. Could it be? Could this be my escape? My chance to return to the world I'd lost? To the life that had been stolen from me? But what about this world? What about the people I'd come to care about? What about the changes I'd made, the battles I'd fought, the future I was building? The choice tore at me, a brutal dichotomy between past and present, between duty and desire. On the one hand, there was the allure of my original realm, the chance to reclaim my former power, to seek out old allies, to perhaps even prevent my original downfall, to be the powerful cultivator. On the other hand, there was this world, this twisted, broken, fascinating world that I'd come to care about. There were the men I'd helped liberate from the fighting ring, the communities I'd supported with my artifacts, the fledgling movement for equality I'd inadvertently sparked. And then there were the women. Yeva Sinclair, the powerful, possessive officer who had, despite her initial intentions, become a grudging ally, a protector, a friend. Her loyalty was fierce, her strength undeniable, and her begrudging respect for me was warming in its own strange way. Victoria Monroe, the ruthless heiress, humbled and stripped of her power, had shown glimpses of something else. Vulnerability, regret, perhaps even the potential for redemption. She was a broken reflection of what unchecked ambition could do. Sophia Lancaster, the enigmatic student president, was still a mystery, a complex and unpredictable force. But I sensed in her a kindred spirit, a fellow rebel, a woman who understood the intricacies of power and the importance of challenging the status quo. And Jillian, the loyal, protective mercenary, a friend and a confidant. Each woman presented a different path, a different future. The choice was agonizing. It was a choice between reclaiming my past and embracing my present, between power and connection, between revenge and acceptance. I spent days, weeks, agonizing over the decision. I studied the gateway, trying to understand its nature, its stability, its destination. I consulted with Jeremiah, my old mentor's counterpart in this reality. I confided with Belinda, who listened without judgment. "You must follow your heart, Master Adrian," Belinda said quietly. "Only you know what is truly right for you." I meditated, I trained, I searched for answers within myself. And finally, I made my choice. I wouldn't leave. Not yet. This world, this twisted, reversed reality, had become mine. I had a responsibility, a duty to the people I'd influenced, to the changes I'd set in motion. I couldn't simply abandon them, leave them to the chaos, the uncertainty, the injustice. I would stay. I would continue to fight. I would use my knowledge, my power, my everything to reshape this world, to create a more equitable, a more just, a more balanced society. I would try to stabilize the gateway, maybe even use it for good. The decision made, a sense of peace settled over me. It wasn't the peace of resignation, but the peace of acceptance, of commitment, of purpose. The epilogue takes place several years later. The world is transformed. The Confucian doctrine of women is crumbling, replaced by a more egalitarian system. A society where men and women are judged not by their gender, but by their abilities, their character, their worth. Carter Industries, formerly Carter's Curios, is a global powerhouse, a force for innovation and social change. I'd used my knowledge of cultivation and technology to create breakthroughs in energy, medicine, and communication, revolutionizing the world in ways I could never have imagined. The underground fighting rings are gone, replaced by legitimate sporting events, where men and women compete on equal footing. The military surveillance division, once a tool of oppression, has been reformed. Its focus shifted from control to protection, from enforcement to justice. Yeva Sinclair is now a respected general, a champion of equality, a friend. We still spar, verbally and physically, but the underlying tension, the possessiveness, is gone, replaced by a mutual respect and a shared commitment to a better future. Victoria Monroe, after a period of rehabilitation, has become a surprisingly effective advocate for social reform, using her considerably diminished wealth and influence to support the less fortunate. Sophia Lancaster is a rising political star, a shrewd and ambitious leader dedicated to creating a more just and equitable society. We maintain a complicated relationship, a mixture of rivalry and respect, of intellectual sparring and unspoken understanding. Jillian Wright is my head of security, my trusted confidant, my protector. Her daughter, Lily, is a healthy, vibrant young woman, a testament to the power of second chances. And me? I am Adrian Vaughn, no longer the reborn cultivator, no longer the reluctant pretty boy, no longer the avenging angel. I am a leader, an innovator, a change maker. I came here by accident, I say, addressing a gathering of young men and women, a graduating class of the reformed Prestige Academy. But maybe I was meant to change this world. I look out at their faces, filled with hope, with determination, with a belief in a better future. And I see, reflected in their eyes, the legacy I have created. Strength isn't determined by gender, I conclude, my voice ringing with conviction. It's determined by will. The applause is deafening, a testament to the transformation that has swept across this world, a transformation that I, however reluctantly, had helped to initiate. I have found peace, purpose, and a sense of belonging in this unexpected new life. I have challenged fate, defied expectations, and ultimately created my own destiny. The whispers of the past are silent now, replaced by the roar of a future I am proud to have built. I had, in the end, chosen not to escape this world, but to embrace it, to reshape it, to make it my own.